Good morning. Our gathering music video was Love Song to the Earth. This song was created to raise awareness about our beautiful Earth and its fragility, especially with the climate change the world is experiencing. The song was written in the hopes that people will be inspired to take action. Similar to our speaker here today, Hallie Jones, who brings us an update on our precious open space to increase our awareness and to inspire us to take action. The gathering music song was written by Paul McCartney and Natasha Bedingfield, along with other songwriters. The artists, producers, and directors of the Love Song Project and Apple iTunes downloads are donating their respective proceeds to Friends of the Earth, US, and the United Nations Foundation. This is a hybrid service. It's both in person and by Zoom, and I'm your worship associate, Rachel Daniels. I'm in the fellowship, of course, the people here can see, but for those on Zoom. And for hybrid services, we have 2 AV technicians. Don is working his tech magic from Las Vegas. Pam, who masterminds our Sunday services, is our AV technician here in the fellowship. The powerful and beautiful music that Carole provides is being performed safely from her home. The lit candles, hot coffee, delicious cookies, other baked treats, and swept front are brought to you by the dynamic duo of Paul and Candy. In Unitarian Universalism, we accept you for who and what you are. We provide a non-judgmental religious home that will accept you and support you wherever you may be in your life's journey. This is a safe place to stand out, stand up, and change your mind. Our only doctrine is love. For everyone on Zoom and everyone here today, thank you for being here. Hey, oh, sorry, my dogs are here and they just ran outside. Okay, thank goodness they didn't go far. We are honored to have our guest speaker, Hallie Jones, with us here today. Hallie and her work are a love song to the earth. Hallie has been the executive director of the Laguna Canyon Foundation for 8 years. She was born and raised in Laguna, well, actually in Laguna Canyon, and has worked in conservation her entire career. Prior to joining Laguna Canyon Foundation, Hallie worked in marine conservation at the Santa Monica-based nonprofit Heal the Bay. Hallie will provide a brief history of the Laguna Canyon Foundation, current status, and what we're looking at in the future for our precious open space. Hallie has also agreed to stick around for a few minutes after our service to answer questions. Unitarian Universalists have 7 principles that we affirm and promote. Today's service focuses mainly on our 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. This principle definitely includes a love song to the earth. I was not born in Laguna like Hallie, but I came to live here when I was 12 years old, some 55 years ago. I remember our beautiful canyon road before the toll road was built. We protested for months, holding up signs and candlelight vigils. We did not want the majestic old growth oak trees ripped out, which they were. We lost that battle. However, the canyon's gifts to us still exist. Anyone who's ever hiked the canyon or commuted to work like me, or left Laguna for any reason and returned through the canyon, knows the magic of the Laguna Canyon and its beautiful space. So if, as you commuted, or anyone who's returned through the canyon, you probably have the experience of feeling like you're returning to the womb of nature in our canyon. its hawks, natural shrubbery, and calming beauty. The canyon seems to caress us, especially after being on the 5 freeway, 91 freeway, or even the 405. There is magic in our canyon. We see it every day. Hallie is going to tell us about how we can volunteer and what the foundation, Laguna Canyon Foundation, is doing to preserve our precious open space. For those of you on Zoom, the order of service for today's program was emailed to you. And those in the fellowship, there are copies in the back of the room. And as I mentioned before, Hallie has agreed to stay after for a few minutes and answer questions, any questions you may have. Everywhere on Sunday mornings, we light the chalice. If you've joined us by Zoom, please grab a candle at home if you have one nearby. We light this chalice to shine on our inner peace, to brighten our love for each other and for the world. We light this chalice to be welcoming to whomever we meet and bring kindness to all living creatures. This is a light of inspiration, one of hope and of love. Entering thought. Please read along as the words are on the screen, and we'll read it together. The fact that I can plant a seed and it becomes a flower, share a bit of knowledge and it becomes another's knowledge, smile at someone and receive a smile in return. All of these are essential spiritual practices. Thank you. Now we'll turn to our very talented music director, Carole, for our opening hymn, 1014, Joining on the Side of Love. The words will be in chat if you're on Zoom or here in the fellowship in the green hymnal or teal. And the song that you'll find in the hymnal says standing on the side of love. However, since not everyone is able to stand, Unitarians changed the words to be more inclusive. Today we'll be singing Joining on the Side of Love. We welcome you to sing along at home. And if you're here in the fellowship, if you'd like to and are able, please stand and we'll sing out loud or hum as Paul Bogdan and Mike and I usually do, just to show kindness to those around us.
Funny, Rachel. Please join me.
Thank you, Carole. Now we have our Unison Affirmation. You can look at your screens at home, look at your screens here, and we will read it together as one. So please unmute yourselves. And let's remind ourselves why we come together. And we'll read this together. Love Spirit
is the spirit of this fellowship,
and
and service is its law.
great covenant.
This is our great covenant.
In
To
peace,
dwell together in peace,
truth and love,
to seek the truth in love,
one another.
and to help one another.
And now we pause our recording for joys and sorrows. Now we'll do our offertory. And there's so many ways to help the fellowship. One of the ways is your financial support. Carole will be playing while we pass the basket. And then we'll have a slide up that shows ways to donate to the UUFLB. The e-blast about today's service also has 2 buttons on it to facilitate making payments online. Always mail in checks. Now we're going to sing the song that we sing to each other in gratitude for all the gifts we have and that we share with each other. And if you have your order of service, the words are on the back of your order of service. And if you don't mind, go ahead and stand while we sing this to each other. Thank you. Okay, thank you. See, one of the tricks of having 2 AV techs and doing a hybrid is that I have to look to Pam and she has to cue. So if you guys look at me and go, gosh, what is she waiting for? It's because we're switching sound systems back and forth. So now we're going to enter into a short meditation, contemplation, and or prayer, whatever you feel in your heart, just a bit of quiet. Go ahead and close your eyes. Feel the earth beneath you as you clear your mind. Feel the love of this community as it surrounds and enfolds you. And take a deep, long breath in and then exhale. And you can feel your breath bringing in the energy, the love, and exhale as you feel your love flowing out to those in the room and to the world beyond. And just breathe in and out for just a moment, and Carole will bring us back. And now we welcome Hallie Jones, the Executive Director of the Laguna Canyon Foundation. We're so excited you're here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. We'll go ahead and get my PowerPoint pulled up for those of you who are on Zoom and also for those of you who are in the fellowship. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. As you heard, my name is Hallie Jones. I'm the Executive Director of Laguna Canyon Foundation. I grew up in Laguna Canyon and have been blessed to really focus my career on protecting this resource. It means so much to us as a community, but also to me personally. Next slide. Okay, so before I dive into the challenges and opportunities of the past year, I will just give a very brief update on the history of Laguna Canyon Foundation for those of you who might not know. We were founded in 1990 really with one mission, and that was to acquire open space. The Irvine Company still owned the majority of Laguna Canyon at that time. And there was a proposal to build a luxury housing development right around the intersection of El Toro Road, where the Nix Nature Center is now. The community really came together and decided this is not what we wanted for our community. And there were many protests. People were picketing outside Donald Brenn's house, chaining themselves to bulldozers, all in opposition to this housing development. When Donald Brenn, who was the director of the Irvine Company at the time, decided that he was willing to sell the land for preservation, everyone kind of stopped and looked at each other. These, hardcore environmentalists had been dedicating their lives to protesting against the Irvine Company, and now they were being asked to sit down and negotiate with the Irvine Company. And Laguna Canyon Foundation was founded specifically to do that, to negotiate the terms of this land acquisition. We thought we'd be in existence for about a year. We'd preserve this 1,000 acres, and then there would be no longer a need for an organization like ourselves. Flash forward to today, we learned that there is absolutely still a need for an organization to be stewarding this land. We still definitely do open space acquisition. We have about 350 acres left we're trying to acquire, but the majority of the land has been preserved. We're surrounded now by a 22,000 acre greenbelt. So that first slide that you guys saw talked a little bit about the challenges that we faced under this COVID year. I think it was in March of 2019, 2020, it's all blurring together for me. All of our programs had to come to a complete halt. So we were forced to work entirely from home, which was fine for those of us who have office jobs, but we have a very robust field staff. We have people who are out in the parks, planting plants, removing weeds. And so we had to do a lot of shifting until we could get some emergency authorizations in place to continue on our work. All of our volunteer programs halted, and we weren't able to lead our guided hikes. We weren't able to bring out our education programs. We weren't able to bring out our school children for our field trips. So it certainly has been a challenge and has really reminded us all what the importance of open space is. We saw 3 times as many people using the trails under COVID as we're using the trails prior to the pandemic. So it really reminded us all of the importance of our open space for all of our, not only our physical health, but our mental health as well. Next slide. We've got some entertainment here live and in person with the wrestling dogs. I have two big dogs of my own, so you know, they're absolutely feels like being at home. So today I'm going to talk about three quick things. I'm going to talk about the Michael and Trisha Burns Canyon Preserve. You might have noticed the sign driving in and out of Laguna Canyon. I'm going to talk a little bit about our community updates in terms of what's happening with the open space specifically, some of the challenges you guys might have heard of that we're dealing with today, and then ways that you can get involved. Next slide. So the Michael and Trisha Burns Canyon Preserve is located right out Laguna Canyon Road across from the Willow staging area. It's right next to Annalise School, if you're familiar with that area. We were approached, Laguna Canyon Foundation was approached by local philanthropists Michael and Trisha Burns about the possibility of creating a space for engagement in the open space with our community. And with the help of a very generous $1 million gift from Michael and Trisha Burns, we're creating this facility now. Next slide. So there's several components of this facility, and I'm just, you know, you can read on your screen. I'll just go kind of through the overview. We're partnering with a landscape architect called Terremoto, and their real dedicated, their real mission is to keep it light on the land, honor the land that we're working on, and honor the labor that we're working with, which really resonated with us organizationally in terms of creating a place for people to come and engage with the open space without damaging that very open space. So, you know, not a lot of concrete, not a lot of construction, really working within the landscape to honor the land that we have. We're dividing the property up into several terraces. We're going to have a learning garden, which will be a place where people can explore our different native plants, learn how those plants would work in their own yards and gardens. We're going to have a gathering area that's, and this is what this photo is, that stump circle. That's going to be an opportunity for people to come together and, you know, whether we bring out Orange County birds of prey and people can learn about our hawks and raptors, different learning opportunities like that. We're creating a labyrinth, a natural labyrinth constructed of stones and stumps. So not in concrete, as well as a cedar deck gathering area. And all of this is being done in the context of these very special native plants. So I really encourage you to come out, spend some time out there. We're hoping to break ground this spring, early summer. We're still in the process of permitting with the city. So once you see things starting to look a little bit more polished, please do stop by and visit our facility. Our offices are located on this property, which is really wonderful for us. We for years rented office space in downtown Laguna that was, you know, approximately the size of this stage. It was tiny. And as our staff has grown, we've been able to move into a facility out on the Michael and Trisha Burns Canyon Preserve, which is lovely. We're up to, gosh, I think it's 18 full-time staff now. So we definitely needed the space. Next slide. Okay, so again, this is, you know, I'm not going to be able to read all of the words on this, and certainly you guys can all read for yourselves. But I did just want to talk a little bit about our various programs and what we're actually doing out in the parks. Our fuel modification program is a really important partnership with the City of Laguna Beach and the fire department, where we work to make sure that necessary vegetation thinning is done in the most environmentally sustainable way possible. We all are aware of the threat that wildfire poses, not only to ourselves and our homes. Those of you who might have lived here in 1993 experienced that catastrophic wildfire, and we're vulnerable to another fire of that caliber today, of course. And wildfire is also the greatest threat to our native habitats. While our habitats are certainly evolved to work with wildfire, what we're seeing is fires that burn hotter and more frequently than ever before due to climate change. So our landscape would not survive, an extended series of wildfire. It's very important we prevent those wildfires. And we do that by very selectively thinning vegetation. So making sure that we're preserving the native species, we're making sure we're not touching those sensitive species, we're removing things that are invasive, that are dead, that are dying, and we're the biological partners, the experts that work with the fire department on that project. I'll also talk a little bit just about our education program. I mentioned that we bring Title I school kids, so kids from low-income schools out for free guided field trips in our parks. What's really special about our program is that we bring those kids out multiple times in the course of their elementary school career. So we'll bring kids out once in second grade, again in third grade, sometimes twice in fourth grade, and sometimes in fifth grade as well. And what that does is it provides these children who don't have the wilderness in their backyard the way Laguna Beach kids do, with an opportunity to touch the open space, to start to feel that sense of ownership and responsibility. So it's a program that is key to our long-term environmental advocacy. And we haven't been able to run those field trips since the pandemic started. So we're hopeful that our partner schools in Santa Ana will be able to start running field trips again in this winter, early spring. Which would be wonderful to get those kids out again. We, generally speaking, bring about 4,000 kids out per year from our 12 partner schools. I think that that's the last thing that I just wanted to cover very briefly, and I'll go into a little bit more later on, is just our volunteering programs, getting people out in the parks. As I mentioned, we weren't able to hold those programs while we were under COVID. So we're just starting to get our volunteers back out in the parks again, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. Next slide. Okay, so I wanted to make sure I touched on the 133 because I know that my colleague Paula Olson spoke to the congregation several years ago now, 2 years ago probably, and this was a main focus of her presentation, and it's been a big focus for us in the community. There was a proposal by Caltrans to widen Laguna Canyon Road right at the intersection of El Toro. It was, in my opinion, a poorly thought out proposal. It was not protective of the environment. It would have involved taking several 200-year-old oak trees and removing a very iconic rock face in Laguna Canyon. And it also set a precedent in two ways. It set a precedent to allow intensification of Laguna Canyon Road south of El Toro Road. So if you drive Laguna Canyon Road, there's a real difference between the canyon up until El Toro Road and then further out. So I think it's important that we draw a little bit of a line in the sand with Caltrans to say, you can do what you need to do past El Toro Road, but don't touch from El Toro Road to the beach. So I think it was a symbolically important fight for us to fight. And it was also symbolically important because it involved a taking of park land that was not a huge amount of land, but my mother always used to say when I was young that there's nothing worse than being nibbled to death by rabbits, and that's how I think about these little projects that come in and just nibble away at the edges of the parks. I think it's very important that we protect against that. So after many meetings and negotiations, and I have to say, this is what Laguna Canyon Foundation does best. We sit down with Caltrans, with the city, with the county to try and come up with an alternative proposal. And we were able to successfully do that. They have not started construction yet, but the changes that they've agreed to is rather than widening Laguna Canyon Road, they're going to stick within the existing asphalt, which is wonderful. And they're actually going to create an entrance to Annalise School off of El Toro Road, not off of Laguna Canyon Road, which allows a little bit more flexibility in the existing travel lanes. So yes, we are going to see some environmental impacts with that new driveway off of El Toro Road, but weighing that habitat and the impacts there versus the oak trees and the rock formations that we're going to have to go with the original proposal, I think it's a real win-win situation. So that project, unfortunately, has been delayed, of course, through COVID. Everything has gotten slowed up a little bit. So I do not have an update as to when construction will start on that. I've gotten several questions about the traffic barriers that you see in Laguna Canyon. So they are already beginning. It's a separate project, but it's connected to replace the traffic barriers alongside the road to help protect from accidents. Next slide. Oh, actually, if we can go back to, yeah, you're fine, just right here. This is the perfect slide. So the other project, and I have to be really careful talking about this because I can go on about this for hours, and I know it's not interesting to anybody but me, but it's a fascinating topic. The city owns a fair amount of open space. And what we have realized is that many of the open space parcels that the city owns are not zoned as open space. So the city acquired the open space, put the conservation easements in place, but then didn't go back and rezone those properties. Now, they're not under threat of development, right? The conservation easements and all those pieces are protecting against that. But what does happen, and I've run into this several times in my time with Laguna Canyon Foundation, somebody comes in and thinks, I want to build a self-storage complex. I want to build affordable housing. I want to build something else. And they look at the city zoning and they say, well, this is totally allowable under city zoning. So it's one of those things that then the city has to go through that process. City staff, as well as organizations like Laguna Canyon Foundation, have to go through that process of, hey, remember, you can't develop on that parcel because of all these reasons. But it takes time and it's complicated and it's unnecessarily confusing, both for potential developers as well as for city staff. So we're actually sitting down with the city, and they've been really wonderful about this process and going through and rezoning everything that needs to be zoned open space appropriately, just to make sure that all of those I's are dotted and those T's are crossed. I'm hoping to be with Laguna Canyon Foundation for a very long time, but there will be a point where I have moved on to do something else. And I think it's really important that all of these little pieces be cleaned up. So that's all I will say about that, because I know it's not the most interesting topic, but it's important, definitely important. Okay, next slide. So in closing, I'll just talk a little bit about how you can get involved with Laguna Canyon Foundation. We depend on our volunteers. Our volunteers are really not only the lifeblood of the work that we do in terms of getting work done, but also just in terms of being ambassadors for us in the community and ambassadors for our open space. We have approximately, I'm going to say we have about 100 active volunteers right now. Before COVID, we were closer to 150. During COVID, we were much less, but people are starting to get involved and engaged again. We use volunteers for everything from planting native plants and removing weeds if you really want to get your hands dirty. Trail maintenance, our trail program gets out there and repairs and builds hiking and mountain biking trails. As well as manning park entrances. The Nix Nature Center depends on volunteers. And we use volunteers to do what we call backcountry patrol, which really involves, stuffing your backpack full of extra maps and extra water bottles, wearing a uniform and going out and just hiking and seeing if anyone is in trouble. If anyone needs assistance, you can be in touch with the rangers, just acting as a second set of eyes for the park rangers out there. So I really do welcome you to spend a little time exploring our website, which is lagunacanyon.org, and learning about how you potentially can get involved. It's a really wonderful organization. I think that's it. We can go to the next slide. I think it probably just says questions on it. Thank you. I'll leave it at that. Thank you all so very much. Better for me to address questions later rather than right now? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Hallie. We are very grateful to you and the Laguna Canyon Foundation for all you're doing to preserve and enhance our canyon, and for the knowledge you shared with us today and your efforts in saving and improving open space. And that rezoning is really important. Yeah, it's wonderful. Now we're going to have our closing hymn. It is Blue Boat Home, number 1064, and it's again in the green hymnal. And for those on Zoom, you'll see the words in chat. And for those of you here, please feel free to sing or hum or whatever you're comfortable doing. Thank you, Carole. Now we extinguish the chalice and carry its light of love in our hearts. And remember, it's our love song to ourselves, to each other, and to the world. Now I ask that everybody stand here. We'll form a circle. And those at home will be singing, "Let There Be Peace on Earth." And if you're here in the sanctuary, the words are on the back of the order of service. Remember to